Hi, my name is Ben, and I am the Thirsty Sailor. And today I'd like to talk to you about a few tips that I've learned about sailing with families. You know, because I live in the desert, I don't always get to take long sailing trips, on the weekend or during the week. I have to often go sailing when we visit our family or friends on the coast. And because my family's with me, I'd love to have them along too so they can also enjoy the experience of sailing that I love. But there are a few extra considerations you've got to think about if you're going to take your family sailing. So I'd like to talk to you about my top 5 tips for what to do when you want to take your family sailing with you. Tip number 1, give them something to do. Sometimes people get a little intimidated by sailing boats. They get a little worried about what goes on. They're worried about if they're going to be bored or if they're going to have enough to do. I found that if you give your crew something to do, whether it's handling a sheet or checking the compass or managing the helm, whatever it is that they're able to do for something that's of course age appropriate for them, this can really make the trip a lot more fun if they realize they have a job on board, that they're part of the crew, they're not just there as a passenger, they actually have something they can do. Now, this takes us to tip number 2, which is don't give them anything to do. Not all kids are the same, and sometimes kids really just want to do what they want to do. They want to read a book, they want to play with their phone. Yeah, it'd be great if everyone was as enthusiastic about sailing as I am, but quite frankly, with a wife and 3 kids on board, you'd be hard-pressed to have everyone as excited as I am about going sailing all the time. So if somebody just wants to play with their iPhone, or somebody wants to play a video game, or they want to read a book, or they want to do a puzzle, let them do that. They don't have to get involved, and sometimes the more you push to get them involved, the less they're actually going to want to go sailing with you in the future. So if they want a job, if they want to get involved, give them a job, make them part of the crew, give them something to do. On the other hand, if it looks like they are somewhat reluctant to come along with you, let them do what they want to do. Let them play with their phone, play with their computer, whatever it is they can do to keep them busy. Maybe it's just sitting on deck and enjoying the breeze or having a snack. Sometimes giving them nothing to do is the right thing to do.
My favorite thing about sailing was
the best thing about sailing was the weather and the breeze, because you don't get that nice cool temperature in Arizona.
My favorite thing about sailing was the time we spent together as a family, and it's so fun being out on the water and just enjoying the beautiful day.
Now, tip number 3 is don't spend too much time below decks. If you're not someone who's terribly used to sailing, spending time below in the cabin is a good way to get a little queasy sometimes, get a little seasickness. It doesn't take a very rough sea or a lot of wind for someone to spend quite a bit of time down below. All of a sudden they find they're getting a bit nauseous, especially if they're reading or using their phone. It's better to have them up on deck if possible for the majority of the time. When your eyes can see the horizon and your brain can sort of put together the math of what they're seeing and what the boat's doing, you're far less likely to get nauseous and you're far less likely to get an upset stomach, especially if you're reading or using a phone or something like that. So try to limit the amount of time below deck. Sometimes you have to go down below to use the head, or maybe you want to get out of the weather or what have you. But it's always a good idea to spend smaller amounts of time down below and more time up on deck in the fresh air where you can see the horizon and you're less likely to get nauseous or seasick.
I got seasick at the beginning a little bit, and that kind of affected how I felt the rest of the time, but I mean, it was fine.
My least favorite thing about sailing was when 2 of the girls were down below and started getting a little seasick. So luckily everyone turned out to be fine and no one got sick, but our lesson for next time is to have them up above for the entire trip.
Tip number 4 is to be aware of your family's fears. It doesn't matter whether they're older or younger, boys or girls, everyone can have some fear about sailing. Sometimes it's fear about the boat heeling over too much, going too fast, going too slow, being too close to the water. They're worried about it being too bumpy. Some of these fears are sort of theoretical. They're worried about what will happen if you hit another boat, or what will happen if the boat sinks or something. Sometimes the fear is a fear that is very real, like the boat heeling over too much and they think the boat is going to flip. And you can explain to them how the sail and the keel work together to keep the boat upright, but that doesn't always allay people's fears. So these fears are real. They're not always in the youngest people. Don't discount them. Don't make fun of them. If people are worried or have fears about parts of sailing, try to talk about it with them. And if you're not able to make them more calm or calm their fears, then maybe back off on, maybe we're not going to go as fast as you possibly can go. You'll ease out a little bit and right the boat a bit. It's not heeling quite as much. It's not going quite as fast. It's better to have a happy family than it is to go just that little bit faster or a little bit more extreme and have a family that's not going to want to come sailing with you next time.
My favorite thing about sailing was seeing the sea lions because I thought those were really cute. Whenever I'm on boats, I always feel like it's gonna sink.
And tip number 5 is actually a tip that works in pretty much all aspects of your life, but it also applies to sailing, and that is happy wife, happy life. If you can keep your wife or your husband or any significant other you have with you happy during your sailing, you are much more likely to get them to come and sail again, and much more likely to have them on board when you're trying to convince your kids or other relatives to come sailing with you. So whatever it takes to keep your wife happy, make sure that they're well fed, make sure that they're not cold, they're not too hot, really try to cater to them, and the more happiness you're able to give your spouse or your significant other, I found, the more they are enticed to make you happy and to want to let you go sailing when you want to go sailing, enjoy your hobby, and come with you and be part of the crew.
I could see myself doing a long little bits of trip. I liked being able to see the shore. I'm not sure I'm brave enough to go long distance across the ocean, but would love to see, in a few years when the kids are grown, Ben and I going and seeing the world coastline to coastline.
So those are my 5 top tips for sailing with your family. I'm sure there is plenty of other advice that you can get out there, but I think if you follow these 5 points, you're going to be set up to have a great time sailing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give me a subscribe or a like or whatever those YouTube-y things you can do are, and I hope to see you in the next episode of The Thirsty Sailor.